This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer, come in, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Permix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den.
And welcome to a special edition of the Huskies Warming House podcast inside the Women's Hockey's Players Lounge here inside the Herbrooks National Hockey Center. I'm Nick Maxon, joined by Noah Grant and also Sydney Wolf, also joining us for a very special preview of the Huskies season coming up for 2021-2022. We also just got off the ice, so if I sound winded, it's because I am. And you know what? It feels actually better, Noah, that I'm winded after a victory. We'll get into that later. Also touching a little bit of some NHL news, but we'll start this week's episode here with a little bit of breakdown of the Huskies season coming up. Noah, first of all, how are you feeling right now?
We're not talking about that. You know, I gotta be honest. When people see the video, I think they're gonna see which direction the play swayed. But you know what? You got a couple of bounces, and that is what it is. It's fine. It's whatever. But we're moving on. And you know what? We're all friends in the end. I think. Maybe.
Sydney, you were one of our camera people here helping us film at the great episode which will be debuting here in a couple of weeks. Sid, what did you see on the ice there? Was it total domination, as he says, or did I really kind of get an upper hand on him as well?
I don't know. I thought it was pretty back and forth. I don't think there's too much of domination on any side, but some pretty good content. I think it'll be fun to watch for everybody, though, especially for anybody who has never seen either of you skate. It'll be fun for them to watch.
That's Sid simmering takes here on the Huskies Warming House podcast.
Is she our marketing director?
I think so, yeah.
Welcome to the club. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Sid has been with us on the podcast before, but I think in this special episode we wanted to bring her in because, again, plenty to look forward to here for the Huskies season. A phenomenal run, and some would maybe argue a little bit unexpected for how far they got the national runner-up here in 2021. But no, I want to start with you here. First, just a quick recap of last season for the Huskies. Your thoughts here for the team and how well they performed and getting, again, just a couple of minutes away from a national championship.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a season that I don't really know if anybody anticipated them to go as deep as they did, but it was just something that I think Huskies fans really needed, and they needed from a group that, again, wasn't expected to be that group. They weren't expected to be that number one peg team like they will be. I think in somewhat going into this season, they were a group that kind of came together early on in the pod and just found a different identity than Husky teams of years past, and they were able to do something that no other Huskies team in 92 years of St. Cloud State hockey has been able to do.
Sid, I want to build off on that because, like Noah mentioned, they did a couple of things that no other Huskies program have done. But what did you notice watching this team? What are some of the things maybe they did on the ice stylistically that maybe put them over the top and got them as far as they did here last season?
Yeah, I thought towards the end of the season, once we started doing really good in the tournaments and all that stuff, I thought they did a really good job of getting those underdog players sort of just scoring goals, and everybody was scoring instead of just the one line or the finish line, the Finnesota connection as some call it. They're getting everyone really involved, and everyone was doing a really great job. It wasn't just a couple people here and there, and I felt like everyone was really just doing the best that they could, and I thought that was awesome because, like we said, there's a couple of really good players, but when everybody can kind of get together and do it, it's a lot better.
There's no question this team does better when they can roll four lines, and we saw that throughout the regular season, certainly throughout the playoffs. No, I want to touch on a couple of players in particular, not that we want to single anybody out, but one player that isn't returning, but I thought was a very key player for them down the stretch was Will Hammer, that fourth line center. He's going to be very difficult to replace, but what did he bring to this team, especially allowing Brett Larson to continue to roll those four lines, and more so, he was in key face-off situations in essentially every part of the game.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting interesting is we had our interview last night. Of course, we're recording this here on Thursday, but we had our interview last night with Bruce Siskey in Duluth, and he didn't put much stock into face-off percentage and that sort of thing. I thought Will Hammer was the epitome of why you should put stock in face-off percentage and put stock into what a player like that does. And he's a guy that he's difficult to replace, not so much point-wise, but the character that he brings in that locker room. You talk about the culture and the identity of what this St. Cloud State team from last year had. Will Hammer was the epitome of that identity, that hard-nosed physical brand of hockey, that mix of speed and skill, and the ability to put your teammates and what matters for the team first. We talk about it all the time in the game of hockey, right? You take a selfish penalty or you try to do a solo effort, you're not doing what the team needs. I don't think I ever saw Will Hammer do anything selfish, and if it was just a little flare of celebration after he scored a big goal for the Huskies. He was a team-first guy, and that's going to be sorely missed, but it's also going to be a building block for not only the returning players, but also the incoming freshmen to know Will Hammer and guys like him set that precedent. Now it's time to take that bar to the next level.
So I want to build off on that a little bit, just because, as we got into the playoffs last season, there's no question that teams such as the name as Air Force, AIC, they were haunting Huskies fans. And you just got the sense that maybe if the Huskies were just able to win that first game, that there was going to be a huge weight lifted off their shoulders. Did you notice that after they won the first game there out east? Was there seemed to be a weight lifted off of the fans' shoulders?
I mean, yeah, I think so. As a Huskies fan who saw that AIC loss in person, that was just, really sad as a fan. But after seeing that win, it was great because BU, I feel like everybody was saying BU and BC, they're going to be super hard teams, and they were really great teams, but it just seems like our luck was really going our way those two games. So getting those out of the way and winning by not just one goal, but really winning the game, I think really helped, instead of just having those really tough games where you're on edge all the time. So it was nice to just win those two and be okay with it.
not like Huskies fans are ever on edge, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice to not be.
I'm kind of curious though, Sid, especially kind of coming from that fan perspective, because, and this is no offense to you, but I think Nick Maxon and I, we forever will watch a hockey game differently than maybe the quote-unquote casual fan, if you will. And I'm kind of wondering, were there a couple of moments during the season that really stood out for you as a highlight, either as a high or a low for this group as we went through the year? I got to imagine maybe Nolan Walker is maybe in the list at some point there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I watched that Mankato game out at Howie's in St. Cloud, and when the St. Cloud State team won that game, and when the clock was counting down, everybody just went crazy. I have a video of it on my phone, and it was like one of the top sports moments. It was crazy. So obviously that Mankato game was awesome, and I think beating BC also was really fun to see as a fan, because everyone said BC over SCSU on those broadcasts. So it was kind of nice to be like, okay, we did it and we proved them wrong.
And that was also your Huskies Warming House podcast debut, if I'm not
mistaken.
mistaken.
Yes, I think it was after that game, yeah. That's true.
So to build off of that, we had the height of, just pure insanity and just pure jubilation. Unfortunately, 48 hours later, there was the low. There was the unfortunate loss in the NCAA championship game. But now, going into these seasons, we look forward here, Sid, I think what's important is, even entering the season, there's a different expectation now. I think last year they were coming in really no expectations of a deep playoff run. This year, the expectation not only there, but I think the expectation to get back into, if you want to quote, finish the job. As a fan, what's your expectation of this club going into this next season and what should be a more normal schedule as we head into hopefully a past COVID season and more of a normal scheduling?
Yeah, I guess last year I definitely agree that it was kind of just neutral. It was like, okay, well, if we do good, great. If we don't do good, well, we'll keep on going. So it was great to see that last year we exceeded all expectations, really, out of any fan. But then this year, I think, there's a lot of expectation that we're going to come back and do really good, especially because we have so many of the players returning, and we just came off, the best we've ever done, really. And the recruits we have coming in are going to be really strong, hopefully really good players that are probably going to have some leadership too, even being as young as they are. So I'm really looking forward to the season, and I think it's going to be really fun, and hopefully we'll be able to get back there to the NCAAs and win some more games.
Noah, let's build off of that, because the excitement starts right away. This non-conference schedule that St. Cloud State's put together is arguably, probably, at least from my time being here, some of the most exciting schedules we have. We have a home-and-home against St. Thomas, a home-and-home against the Golden Gophers, home-and-home against the Wisconsin Badgers, just to name a few, and then I think there's another team in there that, I don't know. But honestly, though, the non-conference schedule is going to be very, very good. And I think having the home and homes and getting the fans involved right away is going to really help, either propel these, and that might even set the tone for the regular season going to the NCAA. So it's not only exciting, it's also important for the Huskies to have a good start as well.
Yeah, you actually kind of took the point right out of my mouth, so I totally, honestly hate you at this particular point. No.
Shocker.
But, obviously that matchup with the Gophers is going to be insane. Bob Mosko's return to the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center in that home-and-home series is going to be a good one. I'm trying to get tickets for my dad. He's actually going to be retiring the week before, and he's a huge Gophers fan, so I'll be cheering for the Huskies.
We gave you a seat here? What?
Yeah, well, I have to pay for it this time now, so no media pass flash anymore. But yeah, it's very important when you look at this group, right? The Huskies finishing second in the NCHC, 20-11 on the season last year, and they've got that target on their back, and they're expecting to kind of replicate that success. That's going to be a building block for them to see how they match up with the best of the best in the country. They're going to get teams that are going to be, top 15, top 10, potentially top 5 teams, and they get to show if they're going to be ready to put their foot on the gas pedal from the get-go. And it's also, I think, going to be a little bit cathartic for not only Huskies fans, but old WCHA fans too, to be able to finally see those rivalries. We haven't seen Wisconsin since, what has it been, 2013 is the last time we've seen them? So getting a chance to not only see them, but know that we have a Huskies group that can compete and not only split with those teams, but potentially sweep some of those weekends, it's very exciting.
So let's build off him a little bit too, because as you mentioned, important to have this good start as well, because as you mentioned, these aren't bad teams coming in. Again, Wisconsin's been good. Minnesota was 1 win away from the Frozen Four. Mankato, maybe we saw them recently as well, not going to lie. So again, you talk about this non-conference schedule. One thing that I believe Ben Holden told us a couple episodes ago, Noah, was that it's willing to get to the level that they're at. It's going to be even harder to stay at the top of the mountain. Sid, what does this team have to do out of the gate to establish themselves that this was not a fluke of last season, that we are this good and that we're going to put our foot down and claim it again for a second straight season?
I think they just got to work at the game all game. I always see people on Twitter saying that, we don't want to give up in the second or third period once we have, a 1 or 2 goal lead, because then that, can come back and bite us sometimes. So making sure we're working at it all game, every game. And also I think just same thing as last year when we started to get hot towards the end of the season, just making sure every line has people that are contributing and it's not just the same, couple of people that are scoring, and really just getting everyone involved and getting everyone excited on the team about, doing really well. And then if we can do that, hopefully we can just have some momentum too and just keep on going.
Speaking of that fan perspective too, Sid, the big fun one I think when you talk about starting off on the right foot and that Twitter crowd especially, that's David Rennick, right? The question mark of, is he going to stop the first shot of the game? What kind of game is David Rennick going to have? He had a phenomenal March and into April. Unfortunately didn't obviously get the result in the last game of the season, but up until that point, he was the goaltender that Huskies fans really have been waiting for his kind of coming out party, if you will. What do you expect from David Rennick this season, and is there another level that you think that he can get to?
I think he's going to be really good because he's always been pretty clutch, especially this last year. In the games where we needed him to be really good, he was really good, especially those Frozen face-off games and the Frozen Four games. He was just so solid in all of those, and I don't think really a lot of those goals were his fault. So I'm excited for him to come back because so many people, I know early on I said, I think David's coming back, and so many people were like, there's no way he's doing it. So, insider
info expert right here.
So yeah, I feel like if he wants to come back, that means that he's excited about what the team's going to be doing, and that he hopefully thinks that him and the team can be able to do a lot of stuff here this year, because obviously if he wasn't excited about the team, he probably wouldn't have come back. So I think that's a good sign.
And Noah, let's build enough a little bit too, because as a draft pick of the Los Angeles Kings, you know that it's been no secret that Rennick has had some consistency issues here when his time at St. Cloud. Seemed to kind of gain some draft stock, if you want to call it, or at least I should say maybe it's player stock here with the LA Kings last part. But again, you can't do it for 1 month. You have to do it. So maybe him coming back is maybe even more proof to the LA Kings. Would you agree that that wasn't a fluke, and that not only can he rise to the occasion at that level, but now can he keep it there?
Yeah, and there's no team that's going to be watching more intently than the LA Kings, right? They're going to be seeing, can he string this together for a full season? I think one of the things that, again, often gets lost, and it's easy as a casual fan, and when you sit on Twitter or behind a keyboard, it's easy to not really feel invested. You listen to all the players and the coaching staff talk about David Rennick. We know David as this happy, go-lucky guy, doesn't take life too seriously, but they talk about when he's on the ice or when he has a bad game or when he's in net, that's the only time that he is serious and he's dialed in and he's ready and he's harder on himself than anybody else. That says a lot about a goaltender, to know that not only does he pay attention to, what he has to do and make himself better, but he's holding himself accountable. I think that's going to be the biggest growing point for David is, can he turn that accountability into that consistency so that when you go in and you play Duluth, it's not going to be 5 out of 6 periods that he gives you, or 4.5 periods. It's going to be 6 out of 6 plus an OT if you need it.
Let's take a look. We've already talked about some of the returning players, but some of the incoming players here. There's only 3 of them here. We've seen their nameplates already in the locker room: Mason Salquist, Jack Pert, and Josh Luedeke. But over the last couple of years for championship teams, Noah, it's been the defensive core that's really pushed teams to the brink and all over the hill, at least in my opinion. Jack Pert, the remaining 2021 Mr. Minnesota Hockey, coming in, and I would think he's going to have a chance to really push for a third or maybe even second pairing. The depth on this defensive core could be not only I think the best in the NCAC, it could be even the best in college hockey. If that is the case, who can go through this defensive core? Which team could really have the firepower to go through, how good this defensive core should be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good conversation to have, to know that when you look at a defensive core and you have some young bodies coming in, that they can play to the level of being an upperclassman, that junior-senior mentality. I kind of think back a little bit to, when you talk about Jack Pert especially, I think a little bit back to when Nick Perbix came in. And there was the question mark of, yes, he's got, talent A, talent B, talent C. Can you find a way to link talent A to talent B to talent C in his skill set toolbox, if you will, and make him a more complete player? And as Perbix continued to develop and grow, we saw last year that complete package come together. I think it's all about taking a player like Pert especially and bringing him up to speed and getting him from that skill set A into skill set B right away. And I'm excited for this defensive core, knowing that you do have those young guys coming in, but you also have a lot of veteran guys that have presence and accountability to get those guys up to speed. Versus if you look across the board, for example, let's say Western Michigan last year, they were just a young group across the board who, they're going to grow trial by fire, but they also don't have that veteran experience necessarily to help kind of anchor them and anchor the ship. The Huskies have that, and they're going to be loaded for bear even with 3 players that are very, very capable.
And, maybe even going back to David Rennick, you still have Jackson Castor, so Joey Lamoureux there to push him as well. We've seen, with Western Michigan especially, how goaltending depth can be. If you have it, you love it. If you don't, you want it, right? I want to go back to you, Sid, because Western Michigan, no question that when they lost to Brandon Busey here early in last season in the pod, that team was an absolute mess. They took a couple of games, they took some hard, heavy losses, but then they started to regain the stride, and it really was, the team probably, that was coming out of the NCHC that to me was the most scary, kind of that dark horse. But when you look at for St. Cloud, to have those 2 goaltenders that are capable to come in, make starts, or even to come in relief, how important is it to the depth behind David Rennick here for the Huskies?
I think it's going to be really nice to see, because we'll have Rennick, who I assume is going to start most of the games, obviously because he's coming back for his extra year of eligibility. But I also have really liked what I've seen from Jackson Castor too. When he's played the couple of games he has, I've actually really liked his playing and his style, and I thought he's been pretty solid. So I'd be fine with seeing him in a couple of games too. And same with Lamoureux. Hopefully he'll be able to see a few games maybe this year, especially if we're on a really good streak and we want them to get some experience. So I think it'll be nice to have not just 1 but 3 goaltenders who've been with the Huskies for a while. They all know what's going on, and feel pretty confident about all of them, honestly. Obviously Rennick's probably going to be that guy, but it's nice to have 3 that are all pretty solid.
As we look forward to the NCHC, Sid, we kind of did a preseason poll, if you will, to kind of think about, where teams might end up. And if I can remember the order correctly, shocker, I don't have any notes in front of me, so we're going to see how well this goes here. But I think we had Colorado College in 8, Miami in 7, Denver in 6, a team that could finish 6 or as high as probably 2nd in the NCHC this year. Number 5 is Omaha. Number 4, that Western Michigan team with their veteran experience now coming back for a 5th season, a lot of players there. North Dakota in number 3, and then St. Cloud and Duluth kind of vying for that 1 and 2 spot. We haven't really decided with a couple of guests where they're going to end up. Maybe St. Cloud in number 1. First of all, where do you think the teams might shape up in the NCHC? And also, is there a team or two amongst all the great teams that are so difficult to play against that you're really looking at for the Huskies that they're really going to have their hands full?
Yeah, I have a pretty general agreement with your NCHC sort of lineup. The bottom I think is pretty solid, and with Denver, I feel like sometimes they can be really great and consistent, and other times they just can't really connect. Like this last year, I felt like they just didn't connect all the pieces they had to. So they can kind of be a toss-up. I think Western, I've been calling them all year on Twitter, the dark horse of the NCHC, because I feel like if they didn't have that weird start in the pod, they would have just done really great. In the Frozen face-off, that was like the last team I would have wanted to play going into that tournament. So I'm really glad we didn't have to play Western Michigan because I think they're going to come back with some fire this year. And North Dakota, I think, is going to be interesting with all the grad transfers and freshmen they have coming in. They're going to have a lot of talent, but it's going to be interesting to see if they can put it together as a team or if they're just going to have a lot of really great individual players. I think that's going to be a little weird for them. And Duluth, I think they're probably going to be pretty solid as usual, but I'm hoping the Huskies will be sort of a clear number one, but I don't want to jinx it. But one team I did want to talk about that everyone I don't think is going to give enough credit to, at least that I've seen online, is I think St. Thomas is going to be harder than some people think, because they have a lot of talent coming in, and they might not have been a team for very long, not even a season yet, but I don't think they're going to just be a team that everybody beats by 10. I think they might be a little sneaky this year.
Did we talk about that on Twitter, Nick, where people were saying they think it's going to be 7-0, 10-1, and it was a talking point that we've talked about pre-show when we could throw that in. So thank you, Sid Wolf. I think you might actually be our producer, too. Are you writing our show notes, too? How is this
Well, I was going to say, I hope we beat them 7-0 or 10-0, but I don't think that's going to be realistic, because they just have a lot of good people.
What is realistic, Nick? I mean...
Well, first of all, what's unrealistic, right? I think you got to look at it from the opposite. If you go into as a player think you're going to smoke a team 7-0, 10-0, I think that's when you get your guard down. That's when you don't play your game. That's why you're not sharp, especially mentally or physically. You start cheating.
The Huskies last year against Western Michigan after that 18-2 blowout for...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it forces you to not play your game, and I think what Bruce Siski said just a day ago is the Huskies and the Bulldogs are teams that scare you to play the right way. It's because when you feel like you respect your opponent, and again, I think Brad Larson, the coach, that would tell you it doesn't matter who you're playing, you have to respect what they bring. These are all college hockey players that all have earned a spot to be in a Division I team. Just because they have a program that was D3 now D1 doesn't mean the players there aren't earning of that. And no question that they could put it together and put together a pretty deep run, right? We haven't seen them, so if anything, how the heck do we know what they're going to look like, right? So they could surprise a lot of people. And at the end of it, you have to respect your opponent, and with that mindset, maybe you do end up with a more lopsided win. But if you go into it with that mentality that it's going to be an easy out, I think they're going to, you put yourself in a hole in that situation. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. The same question, and I know we kind of touched on it a little bit. Sid, is there a specific team, maybe in terms of difficulty or just the matchup? I got a feeling I might know what your answer will be, but is there a certain weekend series in the non-conference schedule that you're looking forward to a little bit more as a fan?
Well, I mean, all the home and home games I think are going to be really fun. With the St. Thomas home and home, that's a pretty easy drive for anybody in St. Cloud. Same with the Gophers home and home. That's going to be really fun, especially because that's going to be the homecoming game for St. Cloud State, so that's going to be really fun here. But otherwise, the away games, I mean, the Mankato game, obviously, too, is within driving distance for a lot of fans, so that's going to be a really fun one, especially because we just saw Mankato, and we know they're a pretty darn good team, so I think that's going to be a pretty interesting game too, to see where we're at with not in the NCHC.
And since we talked non-conference now, and then we talked a little bit about the NCHC schedule, but now going through that actual conference schedule, right? We talked about it too with Siski just yesterday. When you go from, I would say, 6 to 1 here, there really isn't a clear-cut, easy out there at all. You can even argue that Miami's a team on the rise. Colorado College, they're going to look different because of their new head coach. Don't really know how they're going to play, how they're going to look just yet. There's going to be time for that program to develop. But one thing that's so good about this conference, Noah, and I'll start with you, is that, again, every single night you have to come be ready to play your best because any team can beat anybody any given night. We saw CC just a year and a half ago come in here, sweep the Huskies before they went up to North Dakota, and it was almost a turning point in the season where they finally was almost in the Western Michigan spot of last year. They were kind of becoming that dark horse that no team wanted to play. But with that being said, when you look through the NCHC conference schedule, again, is there a matchup that you prefer? Is there a matchup that you say, I want to avoid these guys?
Yeah, I would say the matchup that I prefer is making it to the Frozen Face-Off Championship game, because everything before that is going to be absolute hell getting there. I mean, it's going to be a difficult schedule. I don't know if there really is a team that you prefer to play. In a sense, though, I think you want maybe the upper echelon teams. As weird as it sounds, you want North Dakota, you want Duluth, you want Omaha, because they are going to force you to play the game the right way, I think. And I hope that the transition comes into next year, as Western Michigan was a good team that I think a lot of people slept on last year. You got to be ready for those middle of the pack teams. Western Michigan, Denver, who kind of had an up and down year. Miami split with St. Cloud in their last matchup last year. There's no team that you can overlook, but I think that as you look at the NCHC schedule, you have to take it one shift and one game at a time. You can't say, we've got North Dakota coming up in 2 weeks. What about Miami in the first period of tonight? You've got to make sure that your focus is on whatever's next. Not even so much even the game coming up that week, just the practice, eating right, doing the little things that you have to do as a player. Because I think if you look at it as an overview, and obviously I know your question was to me as a fan, and as a broadcaster, quote unquote, if you will, what I would prefer, but I think I would prefer the players to just kind of put their heads down and just focus on the next step. I think for the pandemic, that was one of the few things that maybe came a little bit easier compared to years past, is that you did just focus on what was next, because it was ever changing and ever evolving with the pod, with travel, with cancellations, that sort of thing. Now you probably have a generally set schedule. Now it's time to execute for a full season.
And so let's bounce off that a little bit here too, because these players, the coaching staff made enormous sacrifices to even play last season. Again, a lot of these folks, they didn't get to go home to see their family for Christmas or for Thanksgiving. It was a lot of that, just they were around just the guys, right? And to a point, that may have been beneficial. You're not going to have, I would say, those restrictions this upcoming season. But I would think, again, we look at championship teams in the past in any professional sport, even at the college level, it's about how cohesive the team is, and we've heard that resonate from these guys as they came out from this season. I guess watching this team and how cohesive they was, is that going to be a true key for them to continue their success this season? And how can they replicate how cohesive they was, even though they're not going to be forced to be with each other 24 hours a day?
Well, I think this past season might have been a little beneficial just because all the players, had to pretty much just only see the players this year and the staff because they couldn't go out. And I think it was awesome, and I give props to, all the players and the staff for doing this, but we never had COVID issues. Like, some of the teams just struggled and could not stay healthy or out of quarantine and stuff like that. So I think that just had to have been a team effort, because if you have one person that went out and got sick and got everyone else sick, then that's, really hard. So I think that definitely, I assume, made the team a lot stronger this year, and I hope that that'll stay with this next year too, because I'm sure they all probably got a little bit sick of each other maybe because they didn't see each other so much, but because it's a majority of the same team back again, I'm hoping that'll just keep on going and they'll be just as cohesive, if not more, this next season.
I'm kind of curious, kind of along those lines, for your personal life here, Sid. We're going to do the Sid Wolf evaluation here.
Okay.
Obviously the COVID season and time period, if you will, was difficult on everyone, but especially we've got our nice producer in the background, Gavin, with us as well. All of you who are so used to carrying your camera equipment to the rink or going to sporting events or being able to be around each other covering these events, or getting in that broadcasting world where camaraderie is so important. How was it for you to be able to kind of know that maybe you're getting ready to get back in the swing of things, and how did you handle that transition up until this point?
Yeah, I mean, it was a really weird year, especially not being able to come to the Herb for games. I got to go to one as a student. I won a lottery to come in and watch one men's game, and it was the Duluth overtime winner here that ended pretty quick. So that one was pretty good to watch, but there was maybe 20 to 50 people. It was very weird. But otherwise, yeah, I didn't really get to be at the Herb. I think I called or did color commentary for a women's game, so that was pretty fun to see as well, but I only was in the Herb twice, so that was really strange to not really be here that much. But I'm thinking by fall everything's probably going to be normal, I assume. I don't want to jinx anything again, because you never know at this point, but I'm hoping everything's going to be sort of normal again, because yeah, this year was kind of weird, and media and stuff, everything was really chaotic with just don't touch anything, don't go by anybody, take your your COVID test and your evaluations every day, and it was kind of stressful.
I was gonna say that staying away from everybody, you guys treat me like that every day, so I don't know what I don't know what the difference is there. The other kind of update, I think you were also at the NCHC Frozen Face-Off too.
Yeah, I did get to go to that, but only one or two games at the Herb.
Sitting in a seat with a bunch of North Dakota fans sounds like the dream, right?
That was pretty wild, I gotta say. But I do have to say that the North Dakota fans did give me crap, but they were all pretty nice to me about it too.
Are you sure they weren't like drugged beforehand?
I don't know. The game that we did play them, they sort of turned on me a little bit, but before that, they were quite nice. I don't think I've ever been as feeling like a celebrity as I did in Grand Forks, walking around with my St. Cloud State jersey. People were honking at me and just would stop me on the street. It was like being a celebrity there.
So my follow-up question for this year, of course, Nick Maxon entering his final season or so, he says he might be here for another 6 years. We don't know.
I don't even know.
So supposedly entering his final season here for broadcasting, you're actually in a different transition for school. What are you up to, Sid Wolf, in terms of your schooling onto your next phase coming up this year?
Oh, well, I do still do some broadcast stuff, some freelance stuff, and I'm hoping to do some more play-by-play color commentary for KVSC this year. We'll see, because I like doing all sports, so anything they'll put me on, I'll gladly do, but I'm also in grad school right now, so I still technically at St. Cloud State for another 2 years because, I liked it so much I can't get away, but that's not a bad thing.
Hey, I don't even go here, so I don't know.
So, and I get free hockey tickets, so, it pays off. It's not too bad.
So you want to get me some for the Gopher game for my dad, or can we talk a little bit after?
Maybe, we'll see. But
Well, guys, I think it's prediction time. For the Huskies, we had them 1-2, but I think we need a hard number. Noel, I'll start with you. Where do the Huskies finish regular season-wise here in the NCHC Conference?
I think they finished second by a single point, and the only reason I say that is because I think that they're definitely capable of being that first place team. I just know how difficult the NCHC is going to be, and I think it's going to be a bloodbath this year. Quite honestly, I believe is it still 24 games that we're going to have in the conference? I think conference-wise, if you look at the Huskies, let me try to do some quick math here. I think they're going to finish 19 and whatever the other number is, 6, is that right? No,
Sounds
5.
right.
5.
Yeah.
Wow, a lot of math. 19 and 5 are like 19, 4, and one, something like that, and maybe a shootout loss or an OT loss is going to be the difference. But I think they're going to be 1 or 2 for sure, but it's going to be tight.
And for you, Sid, again, it's all about the pairwise too. So again, that non-conference schedule also plays a part into where they finish in the national rankings. But for the NCHC conference, where do they finish and why?
I'm going to go bold and say they're going to finish first in the NCHC just because I think the other teams are going to be really good. I don't think it's going to be like crazy. St. Cloud State is just way better than everyone. But I think the other teams might just be a little bit more inconsistent. I see the Huskies hopefully being the more consistent team and everyone else maybe getting a couple more losses here and there. So hopefully that'll help us get up there to number 1.
Are you ready for me to piss off a lot of Huskies fans?
Well, maybe.
I'm going to say they're going to finish second. And here's why. Again, it's such a difficult conference to play in. It is the toughest conference in college hockey. So many good teams. And just what Ben Holden said a couple weeks ago, it is so difficult not only to win, it's even more difficult to keep your top spot here in this conference. I think it's going to be tough to repeat the success they had last year. I think they'll be an upper echelon team. I don't know if they finish first, and actually, I kind of like the fact they wouldn't finish first because there seems to be, and when there's that President's Trophy curse that seems to always take precedence, and I kind of like the fact that you're always looking up at something and wanting more, whereas when you're on the top of the mountain, it's easy to kind of get, I don't know if complacent's the word or start to look down, but I kind of want them to have a little bit of that drive to keep moving up and keep improving. So I have them finish second behind the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs.
I think it's going to be interesting. I think I agree with you guys a little bit, but I think they're going to win Frozen Faceoff this year.
Okay.
Maybe they'll be second, but I think this is the year they get the Frozen Faceoff.
This is our year, as Sid Wolf would say.
Because even when we were doing so good that one year, we still didn't win it that one year. So I think this is our year for Frozen Faceoff. Maybe not first, but
we talked about it with Bruce Siski. This year, I believe, was the first year that the number 1 seed actually won the Frozen Faceoff as well. But here's the thing that I think you really need to take away from this. And yes, last season was exciting, even albeit with COVID. How about the fact that we are sitting here on whatever day it is? What is today? The 8th, July 8th, right? We're sitting here and we're talking about whether or not the Huskies eke out a first place, spot in the NCHC or finish second, and we firmly believe that they'll be 1 or 2. Last year, we didn't know if they were going to be a top 4 team in the NCHC. So to see where this team has grown, and also luckily being able to get a lot of those, 5th-year players back, and even a 6th-year player back as well, I think that's a testament to the fact that. Again, Bruce Siski talked about it so well, where yes, it's disappointing to lose in the championship game in the Frozen Four, but you have to not rest on your laurels, but also recognize them and recognize the spot where this program has gotten back to. once the season comes, it's time to put your foot on the gas, but also let's take a moment, especially in the summertime and in the hot months of July, to realize what a great opportunity and what a great position the Huskies have coming in this season.
2 more questions for you guys. We'll start with a player to watch. If there's one player on this roster that you are most excited to watch in this upcoming season, so then we'll start with you.
There's so many, but if I have to narrow it down, one player that I think towards the end of the year I was really just every game watching them on the ice and seeing them do really cool things was, I think this year, hopefully, we see a bunch more out of Jami Kranila, because I thought just even watching warm-ups when I was up in Grand Forks for Frozen Face-Off, I'd be watching him in warm-ups and it just looked like he was into the game and ready to go. So I hope with that Minnesota connection line, if we sort of keep that name for it or whatever, but I hope it's not just everyone, it's not just VD on that line that's doing all the work, it's also, Yami and also Zach Okabe if he's there too. But I thought he could really be a difference maker for the team.
We'll see if Brett Larson keeps the Minnesota line together in this upcoming season.
Yeah.
But going over to you, Noah, a marquee player that you will be watching this upcoming year.
I've got 2. I'm going to name my one and see if you take my other one or not, and then I'll bring it back to me, because I just love being the guy that's talking, Nick, obviously. My first one here, and I actually sat in his stall today, sorry not sorry, that's going to be Nolan Walker, a guy that I think last year a lot of people kind of didn't know what they were going to get out of him, maybe didn't have the sophomore season that he was looking for. Boy, did he rebound last year, and not just because he scored the beautiful redirect goal that will forever live in infamy against Mankato, and not just because of his 4-goal performance at the Brooks National Hockey Center, and not because of all these fantastic things that he did that are highlighted by a stat sheet or a newspaper or a box score. It's what he brought every night in terms of being an impact player, just offensively with the way he played the game. I think he still, even as we come into this season, we asked Bruce Siski the same question. He said Easton Brodzinski was his guy. We love Easton. I just think nobody talks about Nolan Walker and what he seriously brings to the table. So for me, I think he's going to be the guy that's going to be a dark horse catalyst.
And a great person down the middle if he retains in the center position, much needed depth. For me, it's going to be Vidi, and for probably a different reason than you think. For a freshman who came in and had instant success, right? It's, does he take that next step? Or does he have a little bit of a draw step back? I think it's easy to have it one way or the other. For me, Vidi needs to get stronger this offseason. I want to see how his board battle improves for this upcoming season. We know he's got a great shot. We know he can skate. And then also just some of the ways that he quarterbacks, especially in the power play. I want to see his maturity in those areas, and especially more on the bulk side. Because I think if he takes another step forward, he could be one of the more dangerous shooting and offensive threats in the entire NCHC conference. So for me, it's going to be Vidi, because I want to see what he does from freshman year to sophomore year, just in that regards.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. It's funny that Nick Perbix doesn't make this list just because of the fact of how good he really is. The other one that I had that Sid Wolf actually kind of alluded to, because he was such a buzzsaw at the end of the year, is Zach Okabe.
Zach Okabe.
Yeah,
Whoa.
Just the way he plays the game. You talked about earlier Will Hammer. What does Will Hammer bring to the table as far as his character and his work ethic? I think that's rubbed off on a guy like Zach Okabe and the way that he's played the game. I really like his ability to play below the dots, especially being the first man in, as a buzzsaw in those corners. And a guy that I also think he maybe learned from too. I know we have him on the show and he's funny as heck too. Kevin Fitzgerald also goes underrated too, and the fact that he's able to come back for his season after we talked to him a little bit earlier and he didn't think he would be back in a Huskies uniform regardless of the transfer rules or the portal or whatever. I think that speaks a testament to not only how much these veteran players mean to a young player like Zach Okabe, but how much Zach Okabe is willing to play for a guy like Kevin Fitzgerald, who also exemplifies that great play below the dots as well.
Now, since you mentioned Nick Perbix, said let's throw him into the conversation because, again, Bruce Siski called him one of the best defensemen of all college hockey, and I think he's deserving of that accolade. But watching Nick Perbix and how he can control a game either with his feet, his mind, and sometimes his offensive ability, especially defensive end, how important and how fun is he going to be to watch on that back end, having, again, a fourth season underneath here in St. Cloud.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun to watch, mostly because I think a lot of us thought this was going to be his last season, so the fact that he's coming back for another season, which I assume would likely be his last season, but again, I'm not going to say anything because we never know. It'll be really fun to watch him, hopefully just have, you always hope your last year is going to be your best year, so hopefully seeing that. And to be able to see him work with, like you said, a defensive core that's going to be full of just talent. It's going to be hard to even see who, makes the cut for both, offensive players and defensive players, because we're going to have so many, good incoming players and just returning players. It's going to be crazy to see the amount of people we have on this team. So I think it's going to be really interesting seeing how he works with all of these great players, and hopefully, like I said, this will be his last year but best year, hopefully.
Final question for us, guys, and again, thanks for coming in and doing this with us, Sid. It was very, very fun to have you. But Noah, I want to start with you. We talked about this with Bruce a little bit, last night. But again, with COVID, the one thing that I think was the worst about last season was the fans really didn't get to come in the building, in any building. So not even just the Herb, but even if you were in driving distance or wanted to take a road trip, you couldn't see them even on the road. This season, barns should be open. There should be a packed house. What's it going to be like to finally be back in the Herb? You should be back in there, at least for 1 or 2 games. But to go back into a full building, how loud, how ruckus this crowd can help this Huskies team, what's that emotion going to feel like, not only for you as a fan, but also how's that going to impact the players on the ice?
I don't know. I mean, I was kind of enjoying my time off away from Gavin, our camera guy back there.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know. Just kidding. Love you, Gav. Gavin does some great work, as always, and he's got a bright future ahead of him, talking about guys that are young guys getting ready to step into greater roles here in terms of the off-ice participation. But nonetheless...
Taking a stab at me because I'm not young. Anyway.
Hey, you do it naturally. What can I say? But that emotion, there's something to be said, and one of the things that Bruce articulated so well is the fact that, when you walk in, one of my favorite smells, the Zamboni, right? The kind of the gasoline smell. I think it fries your brain cells, but I don't care. I didn't have a brain to begin with, so it doesn't really matter anyway. The smell of that, the smell of the hot dogs on the concourse, the popcorn, of course, kind of a staple of hockey rinks all over. Of course, in the morning, if you ever have a tournament, obviously the Huskies generally don't play in the morning, but hey, the 12 o'clock game, you might have caramel rolls or something crazy like that. Those little things that you experience that you don't really think about until they're gone. I think that, like Bruce said so eloquently, the emotion, people think that they're going to be a lot stronger than they are, but once they step into the building, they're going to realize, wow, we really miss this, and we're not going to let this be for granted any longer.
And for you, Sid, again, being a graduate student, you're still sticking with us for the next couple of seasons. I know we see you at games, not only behind the scenes, but also just as a casual fan. Is there a couple of games that you're looking forward to? You've got circled on that you will be attending, and how great will be to get back in the building, whether it's the dog pound or maybe up in the cheap seats.
Yeah, I think people just miss cheering with other people for the team, because, you can watch games at home, but you're not going to be with a crowd full of people that are all rooting for the same thing. But I always think the games where we play teams like Duluth and North Dakota, and even, all the other teams that are close, are going to be really fun, because it's going to be a lot of our fans and a couple of other fans that are probably going to travel as well. So it's probably going to be a really packed Herb Brooks National Hockey Center. But like I said, that U of M game, which is going to be, I believe, our homecoming game for St. Cloud State, where Bob Motzko makes his return, that's going to be crazy. I'm sure that's going to be a packed game for sure.
Bob who?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's going to be pretty crazy. But I think I'll be at most of the games, to be honest, since I still get my free admittance as a student. But otherwise, I think people are going to really come back in full force, since 2 years ago our team struggled a little bit, so maybe attendance wasn't as high as some people wanted it, and then this last year we had COVID, so we didn't have any really hockey, and then this year I think people are going to really come back for the Huskies and really show up at the Herb.
My final quick question, and it's just a very quick one for Sid again here. Sid, you got to be a fan sitting at home in front of your TV, and you've got to be a fan at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center. And I want to know, is there a difference between when you're at home in front of the TV and when you're at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center? And are you a yeller? Are you a heckler? Are you quiet and analytical? What's your style as a Huskies fan? Are you nervous, or are you calm and composed?
Good question. Well, I guess I'm sort of in the middle. I'm not a yeller. I'm sure you both know me. I'm not a very intense yeller person. I'm
pretty scary.
Yeah, I'm pretty scary. Yeah, I don't think I do that. If things start to go wrong, I think I just sit and steam a little bit in silence. So I guess that's sort of my style. And then if I'm excited, I'll cheer. But I'm not a yeller. I'm not a heckler. I hope I'm never a heckler. I'm not a heckling fan. But
I don't know if you fit in well in the dog pound then, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I just like to sit and watch, and when we do good, cheer, but sit and watch the game. Have fun.
That.
Well, I'll tell you what, to wrap up this episode, I have a little howl to the Huskies fans out there. Yeah, you like that, I know. So, but whatever your fan style is, whether you're a steamer or a yeller, do me a favor, for those who are watching this episode, whether you are a student, whether you are a St. Cloud State resident or a Huskies fan from wherever you are, come out to the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center, buy some tickets, go support this team as well as the women's hockey team. These are two great organizations. They've got bright futures, and honestly, they do this not only because they love the game, but they love the interaction they have with the fans. They love coming into a building that's loud, that you're cheering for them. They love that support, and trust me, as a former player, as you have formerly known, it helps knowing that when you're walking into a building, when you come out of that tunnel and you've got 4,000 screaming fans dressed up in gear, they've got a couple of brewskis in them, maybe a hot dog in one hand, and maybe a bowl of popcorn, their favorite snack, cheesy bread for you, as long as you don't spill the marinara sauce.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, seriously, come out and support the team this year. There are plenty of tickets available. If you have, the money, do get season tickets for you.
And I believe single game tickets go on sale September 1st, but if anyone scoops up my Gopher tickets before me, I'm going to hurt somebody. So,
But seriously, no, and for students, honestly, you have no excuse. You have a Huskies
Yeah.
card, you have a ticket in your back pocket. Let's fill up the dog pound this year for every single home game. Let's show our support that that all of us miss from being a fan in the stands, as well as the players on the ice missing our voices and our passion. So for episode number 68, or is this 69? This is 69. Hashtag nice. Yes. For episode 69, I'm Nick Maxon. For Noah Grant and Sid Wolf, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores. Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it. He scores! Kirill the Thrill is for real. Welcome to the NHL. A game winner.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.